Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Today's episode is a big one. We have a lot to cover, so let's jump in. And first up, yesterday, UK-based The Financial Times published an excellent long report called How the State is Propping Up China's Housing Market. As the government struggles to ease a real estate crisis, state-owned developers have been buying up land. To begin today, we will unpack some of the pieces within the report, some of the ideas from within the report, and expand on them. Since the onset of China's property crisis in 2021, triggered by Evergrande's default, developers have continued purchasing residential sites, particularly in major cities like the capital. However, while private developers once dominated land auctions, or we should say land use auctions, state-owned enterprises, SOEs, have taken the lead. Since 2022, SOEs have won 60% of Beijing's residential land bids, marking a structural shift in the industry. This is a process we've been following on China Update for almost 2 years now. We saw that the state was forced to step in as the entire property industry faced complete collapse. Evidently, the sector continues to rely on extensive state support to remain from crashing. Over the past 5 years, state-backed developers have acquired 130 sites in Beijing alone, allying with broader state intervention efforts to stabilize the property market. Across China, the data suggests a similar pattern. Private developers are receding, while state-backed firms fill the gap. An analysis of 440 land purchases in Beijing over 8 years found that SOEs have outpaced private developers in acquisitions for the last 3 consecutive years. Delina Zhang, head of Asia Credit Strategy at research firm Credit Sites, observed on the trend, quote, "This is a structural change. After COVID post-2023, this is getting more and more obvious," end quote. And this trend, initially anticipated to be short-term, suggests that the private sector still cannot operate without all the state backing. The shift follows China's tightening control over the property sector. In 2020, the government introduced the 3 red lines policy to limit excessive developer borrowing. Many private firms, heavily reliant on debt and offshore financing, struggled under these restrictions, leading to defaults, halted projects, and dwindling confidence among buyers. One of the reasons, too, is that the entire sector was likely in a bubble. The increasing dominance of SOEs in land acquisitions and home sales is seen as a stabilizing factor amid a downturn. Analysts estimate that more than 4/5 of nationwide land use sales in 2023 were state-driven. Unlike private firms, state-backed developers have the financial backing to weather market fluctuations and ensure project completion, reassuring wary home buyers. Julian Evarts-Pritchard, head of China economics at Capital Economics, observed, for example, quote, "The state is stepping in to fill some of the void left by private developers," end quote, adding, quote, "The shift towards the state would be even more pronounced in the land market," end quote. While the shift may reduce short-term pain, there is an obvious issue: the deepening of already massive inefficiencies and misallocation of resources in a sector that could represent anywhere from 20 to 33% of the Chinese economy. And of course, the state is directing state-owned developers using credit from state-owned banks to buy land, so that, in part, those land sales will support state coffers. That is a dangerous fiscal game to be playing, one that has already wiped out local governments in some of the poorest regions of the country. And it gets worse. The Financial Times writes that the long-term consequences of increased state control in real estate remain uncertain. Beijing and other wealthy Tier 1 cities such as Shanghai and Shenzhen have remained relatively resilient, with high property values sustaining new developments. However, outside these affluent urban centres, land use sales, have slowed dramatically. In many lower-tier cities, local government financing vehicles have become the primary buyers of land use rights, not for development, but to stabilise local markets. If this is simply a cyclical downturn, then perhaps in a few years things will get better and these can be sold on to private developers in the private market, and these assets will prove to be good investments and taken off the local government financing vehicles' books. However, If it is a structural downturn, then these are bad assets contributing to the fiscal and debt crisis across the country. China's property sector remains a crucial pillar of the economy, contributing significantly to GDP and employment. However, a decline in private sector participation, combined with growing state intervention, signals a broader shift in economic policy. With urbanization slowing and demand stagnating, the government faces the challenge of balancing market stability with sustainable growth. For now, China's property market is entering a new era, one where state-owned developers dictate the pace of construction. Private firms play a diminished role, and policymakers grapple with the consequences of a massively overbuilt, debt-bloated, and now state-cannibalized industry. Next up, yesterday, Tuesday, Taiwan's Coast Guard seized a Chinese-owned freighter suspected of cutting a sub-sea communication cable off the island's western coast, marking a significant escalation in its crackdown on Beijing's so-called shadow fleet. The vessel, identified as Hongtai 168, was detained after allegedly severing a vital telecom link near Tainan. The cable that was broken is one of several connecting the Penghu Islands to the mainland island of Taiwan. Communications were quickly rerouted after the damage was detected, and there was no major outage, the authorities say. According to Taipei, the freighter had been, quote, loitering suspiciously, end quote, near the cable since Saturday evening and failed to respond to repeated radio warnings. When the Coast Guard arrived, it found the ship had lowered its anchor, a move that coincided with a reported cable failure by Guanghua Telecom, Taiwan's state-owned telecom operator. Taiwan usually depends on undersea cables for its internet connections with outlying islands, as well as its connections with the rest of the world. While it remains unclear whether the cable was intentionally cut, Taiwan has classified the incident as a potential act of PRC Greyzone harassment, a strategy Beijing has increasingly used to intimidate Taiwan through non-military means, though this is an accusation that Beijing strongly denies. In recent months, several sub-sea cables have been damaged in similar incidents worldwide, often involving Chinese or Russian-owned freighters. The detained vessel appears to be part of a network of aging unregistered ships flying so-called flags of convenience to obscure their true ownership. Shipping databases do not list a vessel under the name Hongtai 168, but Taiwan's blacklist of suspect ships includes a similar vessel, the Hongtai 58, linked to Hong Kong-registered Dongguan Jinlong Shipping Co. China's foreign ministry denied knowledge of the incident, and the ship's owners have not commented. The entire Chinese crew has been taken into custody, and the case has been handed over to Taiwan's prosecutors for further investigation. Taiwan has vowed to tighten its monitoring of Chinese vessels operating near its waters, reflecting growing concerns that Beijing is using commercial shipping as a tool of hybrid warfare against the island. Next up, we have two more developments to cover, but just quickly, if you're getting some value from this episode of China Update and you like the work that I do here with the channel, it's a huge help if you can just hit that like button. Subscribing is also a big help if you've not done so already, and sharing this with someone who you think would get some value from it. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. This channel relies primarily on your support, subscriber support, to keep going. It is just me making these episodes every day, and so this is a tremendous help as well. Thank you so much. Next up, China is rapidly advancing its artificial intelligence sector with strategic initiatives, industry collaborations, and accelerated development of AI models, all in the effort to close the lead the US-led West has in the critical future industry. Let's take a note of a few salient developments in the space from the last few days. Gao Wen, director of Pengcheng Labs, a research institute partnered with Huawei, in an article published in party mouthpiece The People's Daily on Monday, emphasized the pivotal role of AI in driving high-quality development in the country. Gao underscored AI's deep integration with the real economy, facilitating industrial upgrades and fostering new business models. By advancing AI-driven industrial transformations, he argues, China can evolve from made in China to intelligently made in China. to use his words, with AI boosting efficiency and innovation in manufacturing, robotics, autonomous driving, and smart home technologies. Meanwhile, Beijing is also prioritizing AI at the national level. A report aired on state-run CCTV Evening News yesterday, Tuesday, detailed China's focus on accelerating AI innovation to optimize industrial upgrades and boost productivity. The state plans to introduce measures across three core areas: AI foundational technologies, intelligent products, and public sector applications. Initiatives include 18 key AI innovation projects, expanding national AI pilot zones in cities like Shanghai and Beijing, and deepening the so-called AI Plus initiative to integrate AI into manufacturing. So policymakers are talking the talk. Whether they can succeed in walking the walk, of course, remains to be seen. Meanwhile, Chinese AI company DeepSeek is fast-tracking the release of its new AI model, R2. Initially slated for May, DeepSeek aims for an earlier launch, intensifying competition in the global AI space. Industry experts see DeepSeek's cost-efficient AI models as a potential disruptor to the dominance of Western technology giants. Now, of course, the other side of the coin with all this is the chip race. All this AI software has to run on the hardware side of things. And so we move through these developments now too. The Trump administration is reportedly considering tightening chip-related export controls to China, building upon policies initiated under the Biden administration. According to US-based Bloomberg, in an exclusive report published yesterday, Tuesday, US officials recently met with their Japanese and Dutch counterparts to discuss further restrictions on China's semiconductor industry, including measures that would prevent engineers from Tokyo Electron Limited and ASML Holdings NV from maintaining semiconductor manufacturing equipment in China. This move marks a renewed push to align allied nations with Washington's long-term strategy of limiting China's technological advancement. The Biden administration previously attempted similar negotiations but struggled to secure cooperation from Japan and the Netherlands. It remains unclear how the Trump administration plans to persuade these allies to enforce stricter controls, though the new US president does have a reputation for applying a lot of pressure. Potential incentives could involve economic agreements or security assurances, but the geopolitical stakes remain high. The ultimate goal is to curtail China's access to cutting-edge semiconductor technology by targeting its ability to sustain its own manufacturing infrastructure. Beyond maintenance restrictions, the Trump administration is also exploring additional sanctions on key Chinese companies, such as Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corp, SMIC, a primary chip supplier for Huawei. Under Biden, SMIC faced targeted restrictions, but a case-by-case review allowed some transactions to proceed. Trump officials appear intent on further tightening these restrictions, eliminating potential loopholes that could allow China to sustain its chip production capabilities. Additionally, the administration is considering expanded limitations on AI chips, particularly those produced by NVIDIA. Discussions include restricting the quantity of AI chips that can be exported globally without a license and tightening existing curbs on exports to China. NVIDIA's ability to sell AI chips to China has already been impacted by previous controls, leading to the introduction of less powerful models specifically designed to comply with US export restrictions. Meanwhile, China continues to make strides in its domestic semiconductor industry. Huawei has reportedly improved its AI chip production yield from 20% to nearly 40% in just a year, according to the Financial Times. Though a significant improvement, a 40% yield remains inefficient compared to global standards. Huawei plans to produce 100,000 units of its 910C processors and 300,000 units of its 910B chip in 2025. But these numbers still fall short of NVIDIA's market presence in China. Ben Thompson of Stratechery, in a piece published this week, argues that the US should take a different approach to what it has done so far, lifting chip bans while doubling down on equipment export restrictions. That is to say, allow the Chinese to import any AI chips that it wants, but go all in preventing China from having the equipment to manufacture its own chips. His argument argument is that allowing China to rely on Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, for fabrication would reinforce its dependence on Taiwan, reducing Beijing's incentive to take aggressive action against the island. At the same time, Thompson advocates for stricter control over semiconductor manufacturing equipment to curb China's ability to develop independent fabrication capabilities, thus keeping it reliant on a system that is essentially Western-led. All these debates underscore the complexity of semiconductor policy as a geopolitical tool. After all, this is not just about a technology war, but the wider geopolitical competition. The Trump administration's renewed push to limit China's technological advancement signals an era of intensified economic and technological competition, something which we discussed also in yesterday's episode. Whether Washington can successfully convince Japan and the Netherlands to adopt stricter measures remains to be seen. The global semiconductor industry is undoubtedly at the center of this new high-stakes geopolitical chess game. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a good Wednesday, and I will see you all tomorrow.